Right. As I mentioned on Monday, I think it was, the OECD came out and gave a waggy lecture to the government as to how to run their economy and in particular their finances. And on this Thursday morning, Nicola Willis has made very clear that tax relief changes will be in the budget, although obviously the detail of that will be in the budget. It's not going to be announced in any great detail. In a speech that she's delivered this morning to the Hutt Valley Chamber of Commerce, she said, "I'm very pleased, quote unquote, to announce today that our tax relief package will increase the take-home income of 83% of New Zealanders over the age of 15 and 94% of households. We will responsibly," she said, "deliver these lower taxes for low and middle income families by fully funding them with a package of careful saving and targeted revenue measures." And she has rejected, if you like, the desire for what would normally be called an austerity budget. In other words, you spend the money that you've got and you don't spend any more, which is why a number of people have urged her not to have tax cuts this year, which she said would be a broken promise and a breach of trust, and she's going to do it anyhow. Joining us to talk about this is our business commentator and, expert in just about everything financial, I have to say, Craig Stobo, and he joins us now. Craig, welcome to the show. Good morning to you. Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, and happy birthday. The terrible twos, Michael.
Yes, today is the second birthday. It's exactly 2 years since the...
congratulations to all of you.
Yeah, no, it's very good. I have to say, I had that whole first week off. I COVID. How ironic. Gosh, we've moved on from COVID, haven't we, or have we, Craig?
Probably not. Still got the Royal Commission inquiry going on, so not over yet.
Actually, just can I, before we get into financial matters, have you got a view on the Royal Commission?
Well, I guess the key thing is, will they recommend a change in the terms of reference for the inquiry? And the leader of the inquiry punched out a note this week around the kind of receptivity they've had with submissions going in, and then how wide do they make the inquiry. So I think that's what's occupying their minds. Do they get into issues of efficacy, etc.? So it sort of reflects, I suppose, the tone and content of the people that have put their views forward. So I'm really pleased that they're reading it and they're going to take that into account. So it'll be up to what they recommend and whether or not it's adopted by the coalition government and all its component parts.
Well, the other thing, of course, is whether or not the commissioners stay there themselves. There is a great deal of concern that Professor Tony Blakely is the chairman of that particular Royal Commission, and whether or not he is too close to many of the principal actors.
Well, there you go. I guess they'll put up their conclusions, and then is there a new commission or is there a new terms of reference for the next inquiry? I don't know. I guess that's part of the evolution, which is why I'm saying the revision or the attempt to understand history is still going on.
Yeah, well, fair point. All right, now, can I just, before we go into, can you give me a bit of a background, Craig, as to why the OECD says what the OECD does? Does they have a particular philosophical view on finances? And because they wagged the big finger today, or Monday at the government?
Yes, so both the IMF, International Monetary Fund, and the OECD, of which I think there's still 24 members, there may be more. We're one of those members. It's based in Paris, and it punches out recommendations from time to time. Bear in mind, there's normally a advanced party comes through to discuss issues, normally with government officials and to a lesser extent maybe the private sector. So in almost all cases, when you read these documents, you've got to bear in mind that they've been listening to officials' views of the way forward. And in some senses, what the OECD and IMF may be saying is reflective of what Treasury or RBNZ or the actors in Wellington would like to see addressed. So what they're arguing for is a faster return to balanced budgets. You've called it austerity. They probably wouldn't call it that. They'd call it more orthodox settings. And, the pre-budget speech this morning was quite helpful in setting out, the coalition's approach to what they want to do in the budget. And I'm happy just to go through a few of those points with you if you'd like me to give you some views on Minister Willis's speech this morning.
Craig?
Yep.
Have we lost Craig? No, you go for your life. What? Yeah. Can you hear me, Craig?
So, yeah, I can. Yeah, no, it's good.
Good.
If you're happy for me to continue, I'll
go for your life. Well, go for your life.
So a few things that she's addressing. This is the politics of the document, addressing the squeezed middle, the voters in the centre who are bearing the cost of living issues, want better services from health and education. She's addressing tax bracket creep. In other words, people's incomes have been rising and being pushed into higher tax brackets. She's trying to balance the books, and she's arguing for a more productive economy. And I'll come back to that statement because I don't think that's addressed in her address, but it's one of those words that politicians like using. But when you look at evidence from Treasury or from the old Productivity Commission, we're a shocker. We're one of the worst countries in the world for productivity, and that's our prosperity. Anyway, what she's flagging in terms of the budget will be investment in public services, health, education, police, disabilities, which ironically are some of the most unproductive parts of our economy. Obviously, tax relief will be talked about, but to fund the tax relief, and this is really important because we do not want a Liz Truss moment in New Zealand. You might recall Liz Truss delivered tax cuts, but they were unfunded. And so the interest rate markets, the bond markets reacted very violently by selling securities, and interest rates rose very quickly in the UK, and she lost her job after 49 days. So what the Minister of Finance is proposing in New Zealand is that the tax relief yet to be detailed will be funded from what's called the operating allowance, and I'll explain that to everyone in a moment. Savings, which you're well aware of, 6.5% to 7.5% government departments. Reprioritisation of expenditure, and some of that came through in the sandwich debate, from Minister Seymour, and additional revenues yet to be understood. When you look at those components, we know about the savings piece, we know about reprioritisation, we don't know the additional revenues, call them taxes, that are coming at us. But she's using the operating allowance as a starting point. That's quite important to understand what that is. Each year, the government has an operating allowance, which is the pool of net new operating funding available at each budget for new policy initiatives or cost increases in existing policies. So it's like a self-imposed cap. So this year, Minister Willis is proposing that the starting point for these operating allowances is $3.5 billion. This is new expenditure in addition to what's happened in the past. And she said quite rightly that the prior government ran operating allowances of up to $6 billion in the budget in 2022. Bear in mind, post-GFC, we had zero net new measures in 2011 after the GFC. So 3.5 is better than what the previous regime has, but it's still extra. And so we'll just come back to the implications of that.
Can I just ask very quickly, though, just on that? So you're saying that the government budgets for new initiatives every year, and so this is on top of the expenditure. So it's not meant to compensate for inflation or anything like that, or is it?
No. So the exceptions are debt servicing and the job seeker support benefit are two of the exceptions I could find. But effectively what they're saying is that existing expenditure is untouched, inflation adjusted, right? That's just the cost of running the existing programs. And what she's saying is what it forces Cabinet to do is to figure out how much net new expenditure they want to put in place and to reprioritise it. But it's a tool to try and cap new initiatives. And so we'll see what they are. Well, we know the tax relief is part of that, but what other initiatives are coming out, such as the social investment piece. But what I'm trying to tell the public in this interview with you is that this is on top of existing expenditures. It's new initiatives. So the OECD is, please give us a balanced budget. Well, we know the starting point for this one is $3.5 billion more than what was the case under previous expenditure points in government policy. So, what are the savings coming from? Well, we know that we know some of those. She's saying she wants net debt to GDP to get back to 40% under the old measure, not the one that the last coalition used. And she's stated that she's working for a surplus, but there's no date for that, which is why I'm concerned about the Liz Truss moment. You know, that's what the OECD was asking for, but I think the minister's flagging that given the cycle we're in, she'd rather go more slowly. And then there's a new initiative around the Social Investment Agency, which I didn't realise was formerly called the Social Wellbeing Agency. I didn't even know it existed. Anyway, the Social Investment Agency is going to set up a fund, a social investment fund, to directly commission outcomes for vulnerable New Zealanders. I don't really know what that means, but I guess we'll find out in the budget.